Hello there. So today I have on Michael Forkin. He's an attorney with Forkin Law out of Logan Square. And Michael is going to talk to us about why you would need a real estate attorney to represent you in a real estate transaction. So Michael, thank you for joining today.
Hi,
And
Barbara.
just tell me a little bit about your practice and what's your primary focus.
Sure. So I have a solo practice here in Logan Square. I primarily practice real estate law, which has been my primary focus since 2005, give or take. And I represent a variety of buyers and sellers in both residential and commercial real estate transactions, from just individuals to I have a number of also developer clients, real estate investor clients, and then just regular buyers and sellers.
Okay. And why would a buyer need to retain a real estate attorney in a transaction?
So generally, um, in the Chicago area, it's a well, a home purchase is going to be one of the largest purchases you make for a lot of people. So you're going to want to make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's. In the Chicago area, it is the norm to use a an attorney in a transaction. It's not necessarily the case in other parts of the country. And part of that reason is that we have a large population here in the Chicagoland area. Our records go back pretty far, actually, just to the Chicago fire, because a number of records actually did get destroyed in the Chicago fire, which is another reason why you need an attorney.
That's
It's to it's to protect your interests in buying and also selling the property. Part of what a title or a real estate attorney does is review your contract in the purchase, and in that contract review, there are a number of clauses that allow you to get out of the contract in case something comes up. The first is the home inspection clause. And the second is the attorney review clause. Those are kind of run together on the buyer side of a real estate transaction, where the buyer has the property inspected, and if it comes up with any sort of severe defects, they can walk away from the contract without any issue, and they'll get their deposit or earnest money back. Um,
within the
and the
timeline.
same, pardon?
Within the
Within a
timeline.
timeline, yeah. All of these time frames are dictated by the contract, and some contracts are different, but generally speaking, an inspection period could be anywhere from 7 to 10 days, and an attorney review period can anywhere from 5 to 7 days, business days.
Oh, yeah. And a question I have for you, sorry to interrupt. A major question that buyers have, does the attorney review the contract before or after we are under contract? Before the seller signs.
In the residential setting, it's after.
Mhm.
In the commercial setting, generally speaking, the contracts are drafted well before anybody signs. So everything is agreed upon before entering into the contract. But those those types of transactions are quite a bit different in how they're conducted. So, but we'll just focus on the residential side of things.
Mhm.
But yeah, you review the contract after the parties sign, and then within that contract are these what they call contingencies that say, well, if we approve of the condition of the home, then we're gonna sign off on the contract. If the attorney approves of the contract, then we'll sign off on that. And then generally speaking, the only other contingency you might have would be what's called the mortgage contingency, which would be the buyer would have to be able to get a mortgage. If they're not able to get a mortgage, well, then they can't be forced to go through with the contract.
Mhm.
And then another contingency would be for properties that are subject to a homeowners association, um, such as condominiums or townhomes.
Mhm.
And an attorney, that's another opportunity for an attorney to review what would be called the governing documents of that association. Because when you go into a condominium building or a townhouse complex, there are a lot of rules and regulations that control how everybody, basically to keep the peace between a bunch of neighbors living in close proximity. In
Mhm.
addition, you always are going to have you're going to have monthly dues in these types of arrangements, and you're going to want your attorney and yourself to review the financial condition of that association. The last thing you would want is to move into an association that is in poor financial condition, and then a week or two after closing, a special assessment gets slapped onto the property. Of course, part of the Illinois law is that you have to disclose these types of things, and our form contracts in the Chicagoland area provide for that too. So there's
Mhm.
usually no surprises, but if there is a proposed special assessment, which sometimes could be as much as $30,000 or $40,000 per homeowner, and
Right.
you would that,
And
that you would
do sometimes within 2 years, right?
yep. And
Well,
usually these are for, huge, capital improvement projects, or there's an emergency repair that needs to be done, and that's the only way they can finance it.
mhm.
So, the other reason that you want to have a title or real estate attorney is to review the title of the property. As I mentioned, so the Chicago area has the largest number of tax parcel IDs in the country, and that basically means that we have a lot of individual pieces of property, and because it's a metropolitan area, we have a lot of turnover. So people people are buying and selling properties all the time, way more than perhaps out in a rural area. And because
Mhm.
of that, mistakes happen. There's a high volume in the Cook County Recorder of Deeds office. I've seen scenarios where mortgages were never recorded. After a mortgage was paid off, that was never recorded. I've
Mhm.
seen scenarios where a homeowner that was selling the property claimed that they didn't have any work done on the property, and the new homeowner gets a lawsuit in the mail because of a former contractor that was never paid, filed a mechanics lien against the property, and they were suing to foreclose on the property to get paid. And the title insurance company, that's one of the main reasons you have title insurance, is to insure your title as a homeowner. They ended up paying for the legal defense of that and making sure that the new homeowner's property rights weren't affected. So on a buyer side, the a title insurance or title attorney really is going to review, make sure that the property is not going to have any encumbrances or liens or judgments on it that's going to affect the new buyer's interests when they go to buy. And one of the main issues that comes up in title insurance claims is unpaid taxes. In in Cook County, and this is throughout the state of Illinois, every county assessor does annual tax sales in order to continue to raise revenue to make sure that all the real estate taxes are paid. So they have annual tax sales.
Mhm.
I had a client a number of years ago that bought a piece of property from the village of Blue Island, and a number of years later got a lawsuit in the mail that there was a tax deed buyer that was suing to petition to the court to get a tax deed. And again, we had to go to the Chicago Title Insurance Company, and they defended the action, and it turned out that it was a mistake. Um, In fact, when a municipality owns a piece of property, they don't pay taxes on it. So it was a mistake on the county's part that this even went to sale. So the tax sale was overturned. That tax deed buyer got their money back, and then that case was dismissed. So that's on the buyer side of things.
Yeah.
On the seller side of things,
Yeah, the seller, that's
uh,
what I was gonna ask.
yeah, yeah. On the seller side of things, it's customary for the seller's attorney to prepare all of the documents that are going to transfer the property.
Mhm.
So that's generally something that an average person, while it's not impossible, it's not recommended that they do. It's it, there you could make a mistake in the legal description of the property, and there's a number of things that can go wrong um,
Mhm.
if you don't use an attorney, and you don't want to be liable for any issues as a seller. So, and what a seller's attorney is going to do is they actually do the title search on the property, and they're going to make sure that all the paperwork is drawn up properly, that the legal description matches the title commitment report. They're going to do a title search, and if there's any encumbrances or judgments, they negotiate to make sure that those get taken care of and paid. And you know, depending, um, they're also going to make sure that there's no, if it's an estate, that there's no taxes or estate taxes owed, all that, those kinds of things.
In the Plata survey, they have to pull
Oh,
that.
certainly. Yeah, they're going to review the property, uh, and they're going to order a survey of the property, which is a land surveyor legally goes out, measures the boundaries of the property, and that's basically an affidavit that this is what's at that address, and the legal description, which legally describes where the property is.
In foreclosures, they don't necessarily have to provide that, the seller's attorney, right?
No, most foreclosures and those sort of distressed sales, as they're known, they don't really provide anything, and they provide very minimal. And there's not a whole lot of negotiating with those institutions. A lot of times in foreclosures, the property ends up being bought back by the bank that filed the foreclosure suit. It's a quirk of how these auctions work in the court system. A lot of times you have these once it winds through the court process, and it's approved for, after they get a judgment and it's approved for sale. And I don't know necessarily if this is a tactic on behalf of the bank, but a lot of times those foreclosure sales get canceled and rescheduled time and time again, and it's like a game of cat and mouse, because the buyers actually have to show up with cash on the day and
Yeah,
put 10% down if they are a successful bidder.
right. Have
But
you been,
yeah,
have you
you
been
and
to one?
basically in those foreclosure sales, you take it subject to a lot of issues. Whereas if the bank buys it back, it kind of clears out a lot of the issues. If a
Right.
bank buys it back, all of the junior liens get extinguished, and it basically cleans up the encumbrances and title of the property.
Like a
But when
special
a bank,
warranty.
yeah, yeah, you get a special warranty deed, and the banks usually have their own form contract, which is, with in so many words, is basically a take it or leave it type of contract, which with little room for negotiation. Generally, I don't recommend people buy those unless they're fairly experienced. A lot of times those properties have seen some neglect, so they're not necessarily for a first time buyer for
Mhm.
sure. They're for more experienced individuals.
So I'll share a horror story with you on auction buyers specifically who think they're experienced, who have a lot of real estate purchasing experience, but still slip up because you don't really have an attorney involved in auction sales. It's just you show up at the auction house or whatever in downtown, and they have a list of properties they go over. You've never seen the property. You just put your price in, and if you're the highest bidder, you get it. And yeah, like you said, you have to put down 10% that day, and then following week you have to put down more and whatnot. But this one client of mine would always call me to I guess help out after the fact, and he would buy properties without knowing if there was violations on them, and if there was a occupant inside, or if the basement had been converted and needed to be deconverted. So he would think
Mhm.
that the value was there because the basement was finished, but a part of the violations, to alleviate the violations, the city was requiring him to deconvert the basement. So in the end, it actually devalued the property, and then the amount of money he had to pay for the squatter to be evicted, it just ended up being a case where he may as well just purchase something on the MLS.
Oh yeah. And that you mentioned something, violations, especially in the city of Chicago. When you're buying the property as the new buyer, you take it with those violations and you become responsible for those violations as the new owner. It doesn't just stick back with the old owner. They go with the property. So you're on the hook. And if you're buying those properties and there's violations, you definitely want to make sure that you're able to handle that or you're okay with that, because certainly, as you were saying, it has a massive impact on the value of the property.
Mhm. And also the amount of work that they require you to do if in retrospect. So the work could have already been done, but you have to
Mhm.
undo it and do it again. So it's
Oh
just
yeah,
really
yeah, it
frustrating.
could be potentially very, very costly.
Hmm. Okay, so I am going to wrap this up and want to, tell everybody who's looking to buy or sell real estate, feel free to reach out to Michael. And do you want to give them your information, email or?
Sure,
uh,
sure, yeah. My website is michaelforkan.com, michaelforkan.com. My email address is mef@michaelforkan.com, and my number is 312-532-2230.
Thank you. Yeah, and so definitely reach out to Michael. He is an experienced real estate attorney, and he can help you. I You can inquire about his fees and in the capacity of what type of property you're buying. It depends, I guess, on the transaction. But all right, well, thank you so much, and you have a great
Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Yes, you too.
Okay, adios.